Hey everyone, welcome back to Life Turns, the place where real emotions meet unexpected decisions. Today's story isn't about power or success, it's about how family, pride, and truth can collide in the most public way possible. So sit back, because this one begins at a wedding, my sister's wedding, and ends with a decision that changed everything I'd ever built. I still remember that morning like it's printed in slow motion. The house was glowing with fairy lights, laughter, and the smell of jasmine. Everyone was busy, excited, except me. I had a strange feeling in my chest, like something big was coming. But I ignored it. After all, this was my sister's big day. I wanted her to have everything perfect. I'd helped plan it, paid for half of it, and felt proud, the successful big brother who could finally give back to the family that once doubted him. As I stood near the stage, greeting guests and smiling for pictures, I saw my parents standing by the buffet, whispering. They weren't smiling. My mother kept glancing at me with that look, the one that said we need to talk, but not here. I brushed it off. Parents worry about everything, I told myself. Maybe they were just stressed. But deep down, I knew my parents had been waiting for a chance to talk about my company. The company I'd built from nothing. I was 26 when I started it, with a laptop, a small room, and a dream so wild that my father had laughed when I told him. He said, businesses aren't for people like us. I proved him wrong. Within 5 years, I was CEO of one of the fastest growing marketing startups in the city. My team respected me. Investors trusted me. And yet, at home, I was still the child who forgot his place. I never understood why success made my parents feel like strangers to me. When my sister got engaged, it felt like a new start, a reason to reconnect. I paid for the venue, the decor, even her honeymoon. Not because I wanted credit, but because it made me happy to see her happy. But on that night, beneath the sound of clinking glasses and wedding songs, my family's mask began to crack. It started when my father called me to the side of the stage. We need to talk, he said sharply, his tone slicing through the music. Now. Guests nearby turned their heads, pretending not to notice. My mother followed behind him, eyes cold, lips tight. We stepped behind the flower arch near the catering area, just a few feet away from the laughter, but it felt like another world. My father didn't waste a second. We've spoken with your uncle. The board wants you to step down as CEO. I thought I'd misheard him. I blinked. What? I laughed nervously. Dad, this isn't funny. Not here. But his face didn't move. My mother added quietly, it's for your own good. You've been too focused on yourself. It's time you give someone else a chance. In that moment, time froze. I could still hear the wedding DJ announcing the next dance, the sound of clapping, but everything around me blurred. My father's words echoed again, step down as CEO or leave. He said it like a verdict, not a suggestion. I tried to breathe, tried to reason. Dad, this company is my life. I built it. You can't just, but before I could finish, he raised his hand. Enough. Either you respect this family, or you walk away. I looked around, my relatives watching, pretending to be polite while clearly eavesdropping. My sister's veil shimmered in the distance. This wasn't just a conversation. It was humiliation. My mother crossed her arms and whispered, don't make a scene. Just agree, and we'll discuss the details later. But I couldn't. I wasn't just their son in that moment. I was a man who'd fought, failed, risen again, and earned every ounce of respect he had. I said quietly, if those are my choices, I'll leave. My father's expression didn't change. My mother gasped. Guests turned, whispers spreading like wildfire. The bride's brother, the CEO, was walking out. I didn't look back. I walked through that hall, past the people I loved, past the ones who judged me, straight into the night air. The lights from the venue flickered behind me as if mocking me, a celebration turned battlefield. I sat in my car for a long time, hands gripping the steering wheel, fighting the urge to scream. I'd lost my family in front of everyone. My phone buzzed, messages from board members, texts from relatives asking what happened. I didn't reply. Instead, I drove to the office, empty and quiet at midnight. I sat in the conference room where it all began, remembering the nights I'd slept there, the pizzas, the dreams, the promises. The next morning, I sent one email, to the shareholders and the board. I didn't defend myself or beg. I simply wrote, effective immediately, I resign as CEO. Thank you for the journey. Then I turned off my phone and disappeared for a week. I needed silence, not advice, not sympathy, just silence. But here's what I didn't expect. Within days, I started getting notifications again, not from my family, but from employees. Messages like, we stand with you. If you're out, we're out too. I ignored them at first, thinking it was emotional loyalty that would fade. It didn't. 3 days later, my co-founder called and said, half the team has resigned. Investors are withdrawing. The board's panicking. That's when I realized, power can be taken, but loyalty can't. People don't follow titles, they follow truth. And for the first time since that wedding night, I smiled. But this wasn't victory. It was pain. The kind that changes you forever. Because even though I had people on my side, I'd lost the people I thought I needed most, my parents. The silence after that week felt heavier than any argument I'd ever had. When I finally checked my messages, there were hundreds of unread texts, from team members, journalists, even a few friends who didn't know what had happened but had heard rumors. Some said I'd been fired. Others claimed I'd sold out and run away. None of them knew the truth, that my own parents had chosen pride over peace, and I had walked away before I broke down in front of everyone. I went back to my apartment. The place that once felt like home now felt like a waiting room for someone else's life. Boxes of files, trophies, and framed team photos stared back at me. I picked up the one photo of me with my father from the day I signed my first investor deal. He'd been proud then. He'd told people, my son made it. Somewhere along the way, that pride had turned into envy, or maybe fear that I was becoming too independent, too different from the version of me they had imagined. I didn't hate them. That's the worst part, I couldn't. They were my parents. They had raised me with love, discipline, and values. But somewhere between family dinners and company boardrooms, the roles had reversed. They still saw me as the child who needed permission, not the man who'd built his own path. And I had kept trying to win their approval, even when I'd already earned the world's respect. 3 weeks passed before I saw my sister again. She came to my office, or what was left of it. Desks were half empty. Computers unplugged. The air smelled like endings. She stood quietly near the glass door, her wedding ring catching the light. You didn't have to leave, she whispered. I smiled faintly. Didn't I? She hesitated before speaking again. Dad didn't mean it like that. He was just angry. I shook my head. No, he meant it exactly like that. And that's okay. Some people don't want to see you rise higher than the place they put you. She looked like she wanted to cry, and I did too. But tears felt useless now. Instead, I told her something that had been building inside me. You know, I used to think success was about proving people wrong. But now I think it's about proving yourself right. She nodded slowly. I wish they could see that. Maybe one day, I said, but I didn't really believe it. That evening, I met with my former co-founder, Amir, the one person who'd stood by me through everything. He'd been my classmate, my first investor, and almost like a brother. We sat at a cafe downtown, surrounded by people who had no idea that our world was falling apart. You can start again, he said, stirring his coffee. You've got the talent, the name, the loyalty of the team. We'll rebuild, under a new name. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe I could just start over. But I was tired, not physically, but emotionally drained in a way that no rest could fix. I don't want another company, I said quietly. I want peace. Amir stared at me for a long moment, then said, peace doesn't come from running away. It comes from owning your story. That line stuck with me. For days after, I kept repeating it in my head, own your story. It was the first time I realized maybe this fall wasn't the end. Maybe it was the start of something I'd been too blind to see, freedom. The news eventually leaked that I had stepped down voluntarily. Some called me arrogant, others said I'd been betrayed by my own family. I didn't try to correct anyone. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any press statement. But one evening, I received a message that changed everything. It was from one of my major shareholders, a man who had invested early in my startup. His message was simple: if you ever start something new, we're with you. That's when I realized I hadn't lost everything. I'd only lost what was never truly mine. I began spending time at a small co-working space near the park. No titles, no fancy office, just me, a laptop, and an idea. At first, I didn't know what I was building. Maybe a new company, maybe just closure. But each day, I wrote notes, ideas, reflections. And soon those words turned into something real, a concept for a consultancy that focused on helping young entrepreneurs who came from families like mine, ones who didn't believe in them until success was undeniable. It felt poetic, turning pain into purpose. But every step forward reminded me of the night I walked out of that wedding. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m., hearing my father's voice again, step down or leave. The echo of it haunted me. And yet, it pushed me too. Because maybe if that moment hadn't happened, I'd still be living for someone else's approval. Months later, my new project began to grow. Not fast, but steady. I didn't have investors this time, I had believers. The ones who'd left with me were now partners. We didn't chase headlines. We built trust. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was fighting my family's shadow. I was just living. Then one afternoon, as I was leaving a meeting, I saw my father standing by the lobby door. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes, they carried the same authority. "Can we talk?" he asked. My chest tightened. I nodded. We sat in silence for what felt like forever before he finally spoke. "Your mother hasn't been sleeping," he said softly. "She feels guilty." I looked at him, unsure what to say. "And you?" I asked. He exhaled. "I thought I was protecting you. From the pressure, the greed, the world. I didn't realize I was pushing you away." His voice cracked on that last word. For a man like him, that was everything, an apology without saying the word sorry. I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to hold on to the anger, but another part just wanted my father back. Finally, I said, "I never needed protection, Dad. I just needed your belief." He nodded, eyes glassy. "Maybe it's not too late," he whispered. For the first time in months, I smiled, not with victory, but peace. That night, I went home and looked through old photos, family dinners, birthdays, holidays. I realized how much time we spend chasing success, thinking it will fix everything. But the truth is, success only magnifies what's already broken. And in my family, pride had cracked the foundation long before money entered the picture. Still, something changed after that talk. My parents didn't suddenly understand me, but they began trying, small messages, calls, questions about my work. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted healing. Months passed, and life slowly started feeling like mine again. The business I was rebuilding wasn't about proving a point anymore, it was about purpose. I'd started mentoring young founders who were trying to balance family expectations and dreams. Every story I heard reminded me of my own, parents doubting, friends judging, and the constant battle between responsibility and identity. But the more I helped others, the more I healed myself. Sometimes teaching others how to stand strong makes you remember your own strength. One day, I got an email from my sister. The subject line simply said, "Dinner at home?" I stared at it for a long time before replying. It had been nearly a year since I'd walked out of that house. I didn't know if I was ready to go back, but something in me whispered, maybe it's time. So that evening, I drove back to my parents' home, the same driveway where I'd parked before walking into her wedding. The lights were dim, the house quieter than I remembered. When I stepped inside, my mother was in the kitchen, arranging plates. She froze when she saw me, her hands trembling just slightly. Then, without saying a word, she hugged me. Tight. Long. Like she was holding time itself. For a moment, I didn't move. Then I felt her tears on my shoulder, and something inside me broke, all the anger, the distance, the resentment, gone in one breath. She whispered, "I never wanted you to leave. I just wanted you to stay our son." I pulled back and said softly, "I was always your son. I just needed to be seen as a man, too." She nodded, wiping her tears, and said, "We didn't know how to do both." When my father entered the room, the air shifted again. He looked unsure, almost fragile. He wasn't the man who'd shouted in public or thrown ultimatums. He was just a father who'd realized how much pride had cost him. We didn't talk much during dinner, just stories about the past, laughter that felt awkward but real, and moments of quiet that spoke louder than words. It wasn't forgiveness in one night, but it was a start. Healing rarely arrives as fireworks. Sometimes it's just a whisper that says, "It's okay now." After dinner, my father walked me to the gate. He hesitated before speaking. "You built something bigger than money," he said. "You built people who believe in you." I looked at him, unsure how to respond. Then he added, "Your mother and I were scared. We thought we'd lose you to the world. We didn't realize we were the ones pushing you out." For the first time, I saw humility in his eyes, not as weakness, but as love learning how to speak differently. I told him, "You didn't lose me, Dad. You just didn't see me for a while." He nodded slowly, and I could tell he understood. That night, I drove home with peace I hadn't felt in years. In the weeks that followed, my company, the new one, began gaining attention. Investors who had left the old firm started calling. Journalists reached out, asking for interviews. But I didn't jump back into the spotlight. I'd learned something that mattered more than fame, dignity. When you've lost everything, you realize what's truly yours, your name, your choices, and your truth. And truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs to stand tall. One day, I got a call from Amir again. "Guess what?" he said excitedly. "The old company just shut down." I paused, unsure how to feel. Part of me wanted to feel triumphant, but mostly, I just felt sad. "Everything comes full circle," I said quietly. Maybe this was meant to happen. He laughed softly. "So what's next, CEO?" I smiled. "No CEO this time. Just me, building something that matters." And that's how my next chapter began, not with revenge, but redemption. A few months later, I was invited to speak at a university event, to share my journey as a young entrepreneur. I almost declined, but Amir insisted. When I stepped onto that stage, looking at hundreds of young faces filled with hope and fear, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't just telling my story, I was telling theirs too. I spoke about failure, about pride, about how sometimes the people closest to us can be the ones who hurt us most, not because they hate us, but because they don't understand the new version of us. I told them that success without peace is just another kind of prison, and that sometimes, walking away isn't losing, it's choosing yourself. After my speech, a student came up to me with tears in her eyes. "My parents want me to give up my art for law school," she said. "But your story, it gave me courage." I smiled and told her, "Whatever path you take, make sure it's one you can walk with your head high." That moment made every pain, every tear, every sleepless night worth it. Because if my story could make even one person believe in themselves again, then it wasn't a loss. It was a gift. As the months went on, my parents began attending my events quietly, sitting in the back rows, proud but silent. One day, after a talk, I saw my father wiping a tear. I didn't go to him. I just smiled from the stage, knowing he finally understood that I hadn't chosen ambition over family. I'd just chosen to grow, and sometimes growth means walking alone until others catch up. Looking back now, that night at my sister's wedding feels like a lifetime ago. The pain still stings when I think of it, hearing my own parents tell me to step down or leave in front of everyone. But that moment didn't destroy me. It revealed me. It showed me who I was when everything else was stripped away. And maybe that's what life really is, a series of turns that test what we're made of. Today, my company stands stronger than ever. But more importantly, my family does too. We're still imperfect, still learning, still healing. But there's love, real, humble love. And every time I look at my sister, I remember that her wedding, the night that broke me, was also the night that set me free. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt torn between family and your dreams, remember this: sometimes the hardest choice is the one that saves you. Don't let guilt or fear hold you back from becoming who you were meant to be. Because at the end of the day, peace isn't something you find, it's something you create, decision by decision. This was my story, the night I lost everything and found myself. And maybe that's what Life Turns is all about, not the fall, but the rise after it. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories that remind us every turn in life has a purpose. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and never stop believing in your own story.